Hello everyone. So we're gonna give a bit of time. We're gonna give like 5 minutes to see if people will join in. So before we start, hi Jacqueline.
You check your WhatsApp, make transfer to your account.
Hello,
Hi, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. We're just gonna give a little bit of time to let everyone join in before we start. So we just give 5 minutes and before we kick off.
Hello, Aderonke. Just to let you know that I am here. Good evening, everybody.
Hi Seun. Hi. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just giving people 5 minutes to join on, and then we'll start at 4:05. So
Okay.
just 4 minutes extra. Can allow you to grab a cup of tea, a cup of Coke, anything you want to drink, or if you want to nibble
Oh,
on
thank
some
you.
snacks. So everybody online, if you want to have a drink, go grab your drinks before we start. We've got 3 minutes, and then we kick off.
Oh, thank you.
Masim Mewashe.
I'm sorry, did somebody call my name?
You tell me that kind of thing because yeah, you don't you guys see no.
Right. Let's see what's actually going on. Okay, so hello everybody. Hello everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Aderonke.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Hi.
How are you?
Why
I'm fine, thank you.
Good, good, good. I'm good. How's it been?
Good, good. It's good to see you.
You too, you too. Yes, I decided to anchor today's talk. I've always been behind the scenes, but today I decided, okay, I'm going to moderate and then I'm going to speak as well. So yes, so I gathered the strong women that I know because I want to hear the everything. You have to spill all the teas. Hello, Shell.
Hello. How
How?
are you?
Hi, Seun.
I think we're just
Hi,
waiting
Jacqueline. How are you?
for Dolapo.
I'm good.
I've not heard anything from her, so hopefully she will join soon. How's it going? How's motherhood?
I'm fighting for my life.
Hi everyone.
Hi, hi. Hello, everybody. Hello. Okay, so oh, Dolapo, I think Dolapo has joined. Yes. Hi, Dolapo.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, how are you?
On.
Good, good. All right, so let's just get it on. Welcome everybody to another webinar by the Jade Art Collectives Limited. And today we are on the art of storytelling. And this is one of the major topics that we felt it was really important to get into because we believe an artist, when you're building a body composition of work, you must have major stories that you have to tell. On your work must have some sort of like context, and you have to pull it together to form a narrative. So without further ado, let's introduce our speakers for today. My name is Akinyele Aderonke. And for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm here. Hi. I will be moderating this talk, and I would also be a speaker. And today we have Dolapo Kola-Balogun. She is the founder of Retro Art Gallery. She is a gallerist and an art consultant. We have Jacqueline Suowari. Am I saying that right? Because sometimes it's kind of,
Suowari.
yeah, okay, good. I'm good then. Clap for myself. We have Jacqueline Suowari, a multidisciplinary artist and an art advocate, and also a TEDx speaker. And also we have Seun Alli, who is an art broker, a consultant, and a lawyer. So if you have any questions pertaining to law in terms of art, don't hesitate to put it in your chat. And so we've got a lawyer in the house, so she can answer any question you have, or you can get her email and then you can talk to her after. And she is also the founder of June Creative Art Advisory. I think a lot of people know it as JCAA. So, because this talk is going to be a 90 minutes talk, we don't want to go in and out. We just want to go straight to the point, and so that everybody listening can have something to take home. So we're going to just go straight into questions. The first three questions are basically for Jacqueline, but Dolapo and Seun can always add a point or two. And the last three questions is going to go to Dolapo, Seun, and myself. And also Jacqueline can have an input there as well. So for the first, can you all see the questions? I hope I'm not. Can you all see it on the screen?
Yes, I can see the questions.
Okay.
6 of them.
All right. So let's start with the first question. I'm just going to minimize because I think I need to see properly here. So this is for Jacqueline. Can you share how storytelling influences your creative process as an artist? One, and do you have a favorite piece where storytelling played a pivotal role? Could you describe the narrative? So in a sense, you have You're an artist, you have a creative process. I see what you do. You're the queen of ball pen, and every piece definitely should have a story. So can you just walk us through how you come about your body of collection every time you have a project to do? Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for having me again, Aderonke. So let me just start by saying that I usually have it comes in two ways, basically. The first way is I have an idea, I do the research, I do the background work, connect it to myself because I believe that storytelling is only as powerful as you're able to merge it with your own experience. Like if you're able to merge it with an experience that you have when you're telling the story, people will have more conviction than when you just carry a narrative and just splash it on in work. So first of all, I get the idea, I find a way to tailor it into my own experience. When I do that, then I begin to source for how the body of work will look like. Is it going to have elaborate hairstyle, which my work is basically known for? Is it going to have clothing? What kind of clothing are the people going to wear? I begin to do all that research before I now start to take photographs, source for references, and all of that. The second one is I have an idea in my head and I just start to work. But I always work in a body of work. I don't do just one painting alone. I really do like maybe 5 to 10 pieces in a body of work. And then I now find ways to make all of them similar. So once I've done that, I begin to look at it and okay, maybe search for what kind of theme marries all these bodies of work. Like what is the theme that marries all these paintings? And if I'm able to arrive at that, then I say, okay, this is the theme. And then I find a way to, make sure that the theme is embedded in paintings, so from the title to the outlook and all of that. So it usually happens in either way, one of the two. But for me, most of the time, it happens in the first way. I have an idea, I look for the references, I look for the narrative, and I tailor it into my own personal experience. As to the narrative, like an example of how I've used the narrative for a body of work, I would say I do that for all my body of works, but let me just take one. Let me use Now I Wear Myself, which I exhibited in Dolly's Gallery in 2021 and in Lagos in 2021 too. For Now I Wear Myself, the narrative for Now I Wear Myself was, talking about how that we're just coming out of the lockdown. So I was using the idea of masking as a metaphor for how we now mask ourselves. We're not showing our true selves in society. And then also just shortly after the lockdown, we had the EndSARS protest and all of that. So I used the masking from, what is required of people, so that they will avoid being stereotyped and judged by the Nigerian police and by other people, law enforcement agencies. The idea of masking your personality so that you can blend in and fit in, because people once you're different in society, you kind of are marked as, a target for oppression, sort of. And I use the ideology of masking. I also wove it into our traditional ancestry and masking in traditional ceremonies. So is the mask one mask, but used in three different types of ways and expressing three different kinds of ideologies. And I was able to, just weave through them and find a common denominator. And from that body of work, I was exploring different kinds of masking. The masking of fear, pretending to be brave, the masking of appearances, pretending to be happy, the masking of sorrows, masking of suicidal thoughts, masking of people putting their head in the soil, in the ground like an ostrich and acting like you don't know what's happening in your environment. People are dying in one place and you're here acting like you don't know that it's happening in your same country, So there were different pieces in the body of work that were addressing, some of them were more political than the others, some of them were subtly political, some of them were obvious, like there was one where I was talking about how to scream so no one can hear you. That one was about suicide. So for me, I believe that storytelling is essential in helping the viewer experience your work the way you feel it as an artist. I mean, everybody can be open to their own interpretation, but if you don't weave a narrative around the work, nobody knows what you're trying to tell them or what you're trying to say through the work. I don't know if I've answered all the questions.
Oh, yes,
Is
you
that
did. Yes, you did. So, before we move to question two, I have just one question from what you said. Um, Based on what we see going on today, people following trends and stuff, from your point of view as an artist, do you think um, those kind of work have posterity? Because if you're not building works based on narrative, based on your surrounding, your environment, your cultural background or cultural heritage, what you've experienced, all those kind of things, doing research and development and all that, if your body of work doesn't come together based on your own personal experience or something you or a story you want to tell, do you think works produced just by following trend has posterity? Do you think it will have posterity?
I think the only posterity those kind of works will have are placeholders. I feel like maybe even somebody just making a reference, a casual reference to, oh, this kind of thing that was raining in 2025 or it was raining in 2021, you know. But I don't believe that for a long-lasting legacy, those kind of works have posterity. The role of an artist, I often say, is to be a priest, is to be a priest, is to be a doctor, is to be someone that prefers solutions. The role of an artist is to also, you know, talk about the past, talk about the future, and you know, bring out solutions for the present day. So you cannot. I feel like those people who are following trends don't know their roles as artists. It's quite unfortunate that we don't have the wealth of manpower to encourage younger artists or even artists in general to actually pursue the inner dialogue that they go through inside of them. You know, as an artist, if you're not true to the calling that you have, there's a reason why we're all different artists.
Yeah.
Nobody can do the things I do the way I do them. And if you mask that your identity and you now follow the trend, that means you're not being true to yourself. That means your voice is lost. That means at some point you're going to wake up and nobody's going to know who you are or your contribution to the world. You get so following trends just means that you're going to be a placeholder, you're going to be lost in time. Nobody's going to know the contribution that your work brought, you know, and then I see it a lot and it's actually quite sad. Especially if you want to have a lasting career, you want to have a career in the arts. A lot of times I believe that people do that because they're trying to, you know, when you latch on this trend, you sell your work, another trend comes, you delete all the images from your Instagram, start another trend. I believe that maybe they do that because they're looking for money, but it's not money that's your first calling is to be an artist, it's not to pursue money. And it's in being an artist that the money is going to come, I believe. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Seun, do you have anything to contribute? And also Dolapo, if you have anything before we move on to the next question.
No, I think this was very well said.
Oh, okay. All right then. And Seun, you're good. We can go on to the next one.
Yes, I mean, Jacqueline has sort of answered the question, really well. And I really like something that you said about it relating to you personally. At the end of the day, what an artist is doing is observing the environment, and they would see the environment based on, their own lenses, right? So it's you're not going to say it the way somebody else is saying it. You're not going to see it sometimes the way somebody else sees it. So it still has to be personal. So sometimes when I hear artists say, "Oh, they're not activists," or they're not championing anything, I start to worry because it just basically means you're again maybe following trends and you don't really stand for something, or you're not really interested in a few things, which is very worrying, right? So yeah, I think Jacqueline has said it all. I really like her answers to the questions.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move into question two, and that's also for Jacqueline. How do you balance visual aesthetics with the depth of the story that you want to convey in your work? What challenges do you face when trying to communicate complex stories through art?
Okay, that's a two-pronged question. So let me start with the first part. Um, for me, I think first of all, when it comes to visual aesthetics, the style of an artist comes into play. Like, what's your style? What do you do? I keep telling people every time that as an artist, your identity is tied to your style. I mean, we have artists like Picasso who through the years have through the years they were regenerating themselves. So they were doing this particular thing for a particular time, then they chose to regenerate themselves. That's okay as an artist, so far as you have consistency, so far as people can trace that this is how you've grown through the years, this is what you're doing, people can follow, So visual aesthetics are very important, but at the same time, you try your best to make sure that they merge with the story that you're telling. Um, there's a work I've done, one of my works from the way they see us. So for people who don't know about my work, the way they see us was a body of work that, it had some sort of abstractions in people's features. And for that story, I was trying to talk about tribalism, racism, and colorism. But I didn't just come out and just say this is what this work is about. One of the first things you do in storytelling and visual aesthetics is that you make the work, you do two things. Either the work is beautiful or it's shocking. So if it's whatever it does, it will trigger curiosity from the audience. And they'll be like, okay, so what is this about? I said it one time when I was giving a talk that art is the only thing that happens to you without your permission. So when you're experiencing art, it's not something that your walls are up. Your walls are not up when you're experiencing art because you're curious as to what was this artist thinking when they're doing this. So the first thing I did with that body of work was I used three particular kinds of people. So some people did not have eyes, some people did not have faces, some people did not have mouths. I gave them they were fictional characters from fictional kingdoms. And because I didn't want to make it Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, because that's like the general, when you talk about tribalism, everybody's like, those are the three major tribes in Nigeria. I rooted all of those tribes in my village in Delta State. I just made a fictional kingdom and I put everybody in Delta State so that way nobody can come and say, oh, you said this and you said that about this tribe, So, or why do my people not have eyes? Why do people not have nose? Why do they have chicken? Like, do not make another narrative out of that. You politicize what you're trying to say. So I, first of all, watched that and I was making sure that I was safe by putting it in my own village. So you can't say that I insulted anybody. That's the first thing. And then the second thing I did was to now talk about the kingdoms and talk, and I also merged it with because when people see an image of, I wish I could put up one of the pictures from the body of work. I don't know, I didn't think about that, sorry. Okay, so when you see a picture of someone that doesn't have eyes, the first instinct is to think oh, that's a blind person, and then you start asking questions and I tell you, oh, actually that's not a blind person, the fact that they don't have eyes, that's a superpower. And you're like, oh, okay, that's a superpower. What is a superpower? And I'm like, they can read your thoughts, they can read your mind, they can see your past and your future. Like, oh wow, So you now begin to see that something that you thought in the beginning was a disability is actually something that is actually their power, their strength. And I use that story because I don't want to go into all of it. It's quite a lot, but I use that example to talk about how that people assume that because they don't understand something from a particular given tribe or race or culture, that their culture is superior to that culture. Because you don't understand something, it doesn't mean that yours is superior. You just need to calm down and understand, and then you find out that you can learn from those people. You can learn from their culture. You can learn from this so-called thing that you're saying is a disadvantage, basically. And even when we talk about physical appearances, people that are blind, everybody can testify that they have heightened senses more than us that can see with our normal eyes. So I use the visual aesthetics to convey that story. One of the works in that body of work was Ashwebi assembly. So everybody knows in Nigeria that we use Ashwebi for ceremonies to celebrate. Commemorative clothing plays a huge role in my work generally. And so I use Ashwebi, to talk about how these three kingdoms, after finding out about each other, after going through the rigors of fighting and finally accepting each other, they now start celebrating and having festivals. And in the festivals, they used to wear Ashwebi. So one of the paintings had about 5 people. While we're talking, I think while people are talking, while Dolly and Seun and you are talking, I would source for those images so that it would just balance everything. So I used one of the paintings had 5 people. It was about 10 feet. It had 5 people, and they were wearing different styles of Ashobi, just to show how we wear Ashobi in Nigeria. Different styles, but it's the same lace. And then inside of those people in the commemorative clothing part, so those places that have pictures, I put ancient masks from different tribes, from Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, and Edo Kingdom, Benin Kingdom. Sorry, I put those masks in the commemorative clothing so that if you were a deep thinker, you know that this thing is about tribalism in Nigeria. But I mean, the narrative could spread a little wider. You could stretch it to talk about racism, talk about other kinds of injustice in the system. So the last part is, how do you make sure that the story you're trying to communicate is not lost by the complexities of the visual aesthetics? I feel like sometimes it's kind of dicey as an artist, which is why I feel like when you go to exhibitions, they have text and they have the work, because you can't really, no matter how you feel this work is trying to, no matter how you think you're trying to portray what you think you're trying to portray with the body of work, people are open to their own interpretations. I can put my hand up like this and I ask, oh, how many fingers? And some people will say they're seeing only 4. And there's nothing you will tell them. That's all that they can see, because people experience the work from their own experiences. They experience the work from their own past experiences. They cannot experience it from your experience. So we'll see it in different ways. So it's not really easy to communicate the work and the idea without it being kind of lost, from the visual aesthetics. But I do my best, so that when the work attracts you from the curiosity, you now start looking at it, and then you start asking your questions and answering your questions within yourself before you now read the narrative that's written on the wall and be like, oh, okay, I see how these things tie in. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Oh, yes, you did. I think you answered number 3 as well.
Oh, wow.
So before we come back to you, I'll just jump to Seun and Dolapo, and I'll go straight to question 5 because it moves along with what you just said. This is for Dolapo and Seun. What role do you think storytelling plays in connecting audiences with art? How do you collaborate with artists to ensure their narrative vision is preserved during curation? So who wants to go first, Seun or Dolapo? Do you want to go first, Dolapo?
Could you reiterate what role does storytelling
It's number
play?
5, question 5. What role do you think storytelling plays in connecting audiences with art? How do you collaborate with artists to ensure their narrative vision is preserved during curation?
Well, I think storytelling is at the core of any curatorial practice or any exhibition. Curation is the organization of the artist's vision, what they're trying to tell the audience, the way in which the curator is trying to convey what the artist has articulated, infusing as well their perspective of how they've worked with the artists and what they think the broader trends or the broader narratives could be, and finding a way for it to resonate with the people who attend as well. I think Jacqueline mentioned earlier, an artist can put a lot of work into creating a body of work, into trying to articulate what it is they feel, how they experience the world. But the moment that the work is out there, as she said, it's very difficult to guarantee that the audience is going to be able to receive what the person has said without filtering it through their own lens. And I think that's part of the beauty of art as well, which is that it's the same thing with any form of communication, the same thing with music, the same thing with film. When you tell a story, everybody interprets that story through the lens of their own experiences or their own fears or their own traumas or their own desires or their own perceptions or their own biases, etc. And so the curator is supposed to be the bridge between that gap, because the curator is both an external party to the artist's work, but is also a person who is intimately associated with the artist in such a way that he can articulate, or he or she can articulate or understand the essence of what the artist is trying to convey, but can also understand what a secondary party could potentially also experience. And so the job, I suppose, is ultimately the job of any other producer, so to speak. So if you're a film producer or a director, your job is to be as faithful to the artist's intention as possible, while also ensuring that the audience can also get something out of it that they can relate to as well. So to answer your question, storytelling is the whole point of exhibitions. It's the whole point of creating work, because we perceive the world through the lens of story. You can't even express anything, any emotion or any past event when you're communicating to another person without infusing story. I'm going to tell you what happened to me yesterday and why that hurt me so much. I have to tell you a story. When you're engaging with the world, you are the protagonist in your own story. Story is the center of our reality, right? And so art is simply the means through which you can capture a bit of this ongoing story, right, in such a way that other people can delve into it and plunge into it and sort of extract different things from it continuously and endlessly. And it's continuously reinterpreted in a way. I do think that the practice of making art, the beauty of it, as frustrating as it may be to the artist, is actually through the lens of reinterpretation, because art lives on beyond the artist, right? So the artist may not always be there to be able to tell people exactly how they feel. The curator, the historian's job is to try to stay as faithful to the original intention as possible. But ideally, a work of art may live 200, 300, 500, 600 years. And 600 years from now, the way through which human beings relate to the world will be fundamentally different from the way the artist understood the world. So yeah, the curator is a ghostwriter of some sort, if you're going to make some sort of analogy. But at the end of the day, it's just one piece of the continuous story, and then the receiver and lives on through allows for the work to live on eternally.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just one quick question, because from what you said, I brought out something in my head. When an artist is exhibiting, I know the curatorial statement, do you leave that for the artist to write, or do you help, do you influence the curatorial statement? Do you come in and also help rebuild, develop the whole curatorial statement? Because sometimes artists should write their own curatorial statement, but at the same time, as a curator, I think it's important to also read through that curatorial statement to help build up on it. So do you do that before you go on to exhibiting the work?
I think every gallery, every curator has a different approach. In my gallery, we have a two-pronged approach. We have the artist statement, and then we have the curator statement. And the artist statement is just purely the artist's words. If they desire some help in just articulating those words, we're happy to do that on the side. But at the end of the day, you want it to be their words, their own feelings, their own expression. The curator statement, maybe an addendum to that, right? Or maybe a summary of that. Some curators don't like to infuse their own opinions whatsoever, and just simply says, this is what the broader narrative is supposed to be. This is what you're going to experience as an audience in the work. This is what the work is about. And this is the broader message of what this show is supposed to entail. Some curators like to talk about, because the curatorial process can also be an artistic process in which a curator also talks about how the artwork makes them feel and what they feel about the work, and sort of what they have been thinking about, and sort of if they want to infuse more philosophical points into the work, right, and how this links to this or links to that past of history or that part, and how working with this artist was really interesting because it allowed them to be able to synthesize these ideas, or to compare this to this part of history, which maybe the artist was completely unaware of, but just did it naturally, intuitively, and they're fascinated by this, right? And so you can add more to that, where the curator, maybe if they're trained in art history or they happen to be very skilled narratively, is able to sort of flesh out the story in addition. I think my preference usually is that process, which is the artist gets to tell their own perspective, and that's not biased or filtered by the curator at all. It's pure, and that can be read for what it is, and the curator then has their own curatorial statement that talks about their own experience with the work, and then the audience can look at the two simultaneously.
Okay, so can we have from Seun, can we hear from Seun as well?
Yes, absolutely. Just so I don't repeat many of the things that Dolly has already said. 1 minute, please. Just so I don't repeat what Dolly has said, I think the only thing I'll just need to add to that is, excuse me, please, this person. The only thing that I think I would just like to add to that is what happens when, the storytelling has been engaging and you have, the exhibition has now opened and you have audiences come and interact with with the body of work, with the exhibition, whether it's a painting, whether it's an installation. First things, but one of the first ways that you know that you've done justice to the artist's vision is how much people are able to relate. So it could even be the most conceptual work of them all. Anybody and everybody would come in and say, okay, I sort of understand what the artist is trying to say. I've read the artist statement, I've read the curatorial statement, and it's quite clear. There's hardly any jargon in there. It's really relatable. And for me and my curatorial practice, I think what excites me about that is how people are able to then engage, properly with the work. They sometimes come back, again to see it, and they'll come back and say, oh, I didn't even notice this, the first time I saw the work, or I'm just, piecing this, these themes or these motifs together, and I connect deeply with the work, or I can really relate. That's how you know that you've done justice to what the artist was trying to achieve. Of course, when the storytelling is jumbled and people are starting to be confused when they see an exhibition or presentation, that's when you know that the storytelling has sort of gone south, and people are not able to review or take apart the layers that different layers that exist. But just like Jolly has mentioned, the curator might see certain things in the work, and perhaps they've engaged with the work in a slightly different way from what the artist has initially conveyed. But I think the one thing that I'd really like to touch on, with all of this is, if the storytelling isn't great, you're going to have an audience that is very detached and not really knowing what to do with the body of work that you've presented.
Okay, so we'll jump straight to the next question, which is for Dolapo and Seun and myself anyway. So, how has storytelling aspects of art evolved in contemporary art market? What are some common mistakes artists make when trying to incorporate storytelling into their pieces? And lastly, how do you think storytelling in art contributes to cultural preservation? So I think I'll start this one with Seun, and then I'll also contribute, and then we'll go to Dolapo finally. And also, if Jacqueline has an input, then we go to her as well. So, Seun.
Is this number 6?
Yes, number 6.
Well, you see, the thing about it is that's the crux, and that's where we start from. So storytelling, and again, this is initially from the artist perspective, and one thing I'd really say is you must tell a story, right? Whatever it is you're trying to present, you must tell a story. How personal or how cultural or how social, those stories are, that will be determined by how much maybe research you've done, how much influence you've had on the work. But one thing I will say is, like I've mentioned before, ultimately as an artist, what you are really doing is observing and basically a social commentator of the present times, right? So we can sit here and talk about art history, and really piece one or two things together and say, okay, this was what was happening in the late 19th century or whatever. Again, it's through the artist's work that we're able to deduce some of these information and data that we're now looking back on. If the artists didn't do a good job in storytelling about the times, whatever issues it may have been that they were exploring, we can't even go on to now preserve a certain aspect of our culture, because again, you haven't documented social change. There's nothing that can really sort of reflect the values and experiences of the people at the time. So documentation is key, and it's very crucial, because that's where we sort of feed from, and ultimately that's what we're looking at. I mean, what we have now is a little bit more peculiar, in the sense that the artist is making the work now. In 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, 50 years, or how many number of years, we can then go back and say, okay, remember Jacqueline was using ballpoint pen to work, and maybe now ballpoint pen is no longer existing, right? Somebody can't come and just say, oh, it never happened, nobody used that medium or whatever. You're going to go back to these artists who are currently doing the work, who are engaging, and who are fostering intergenerational dialogue. So yeah, there's a lot to say, but let me just leave it there for now. We can always come back in how we're able to use art to archive, document, in the process of celebrating identity or researching identity. We obviously are doing a lot by preserving, culture, things that are peculiar to us, and things that maybe bring us together, and things that also tear us apart. So yeah, let me leave it there for now.
Okay, thank you for that. Dolapo, do you have anything to contribute? Okay, well, Jacqueline, do you have anything? Maybe we'll come back to Dolapo.
I think Seun has done justice to that question. I don't think there's anything I should add, but I'll just reiterate that without a story, without storytelling, your art is basically, I don't want to say useless, but baseless, I guess, without a story. So it's important, like she rightfully said, because the storytelling is the anchor that we use to trace your work through time. It's almost like the stories that you attach to your work are the hooks that we can use to, at this point in time, this is what was happening and this is what was being done, because this is what this artist was, addressing with this body of work. So I think I think she just answered the question.
Okay, I could only add just a little bit as well and I think the latter part of the question, which is how do you think storytelling in art contributes to cultural preservation? The whole idea of an artist is to tell stories, and you tell stories about time, about events, about scenarios, and your cultural movements and things that happen around you. So if you as an artist do not have that embedded in your work, and that's when posterity also comes in, because everything works together. Your work as an artist is to tell stories, is to take account of moments and lifetime and time and periods. And if you don't do that, and that is also a way for an artist to help influence the so the cultural statements that you make in your society. So for me, I think when an artist leaves that out of their all their whole body of work, then I have a problem with the work, because the first thing I talk about when I talk to artists is, what's your story? That's the first question I ask any artist that comes to me. What's your story? What are you trying to talk about? What are you trying to create? What's the context of the body of work you're creating? And if you don't have that, and if it's not necessarily into the cultural situation, the socio-cultural preservation, and it has to affect the society in a different way as well. If you're not going in the cultural direction, then you must have a direction that you're going that actually also is somewhat preservative, and it supports preservation. It might be heritage as well. So I think it's important that artists should look deeper, like think deeper when they're trying to create a particular body of work. You have to ask yourself, why am I doing this work? What story am I trying to tell? And you put all that into the whole body of work that you're trying to create. So I hope that answered the question 6. Everybody has contributed to that. So I'm going to move on to joint question. This is for everybody.
Sorry, I got
Oh yes, Dolapo, yes, sorry.
my
I
internet
thought,
went off.
yeah. So do you want to speak on question 6?
No, I mean, I think everybody said the same thing, so maybe I don't want to repeat what everyone has
Okay,
said.
that's fine then. So let's just so let's move on to the joint questions, and this is for everyone. So I'm just it's 5 questions, and we're just gonna take it one after the other. So if you have points that you would like to give on it, you could just raise your hands on your what's it called, on your Zoom page or Zoom icon, and then I'll see that, and then I'll just call on you. So I'll start with Jacqueline anyway. So how do you see the role of artist and curator complementing each other in storytelling through art?
Um, so I would start by referencing something that Dolly said. She said when she was talking about the approach in her gallery, and she was like, sometimes the artists, would say their own narrative, and then there's the artist statement, there's the curator statement. I believe there are also some artists who I have met who are not as adept in storytelling, like other people. And I believe that what a curator would do in such circumstances, which looks like that is the prevailing circumstance, is kind of help to delve into the artist's experiences and find out, about this artist, and, articulate what this artist is trying to say from their own personal experience. I believe that the curator is the voice of the artist, where the artist is now voiceless. The artist's voice most of the time is in the work that they have created. That's the voice, because a lot of artists don't even have a story behind the works that they are creating. They just are moved by something, they're inspired by something, and so they create it. So they don't even know how to apply those creations into modern day life, into contemporary life. And I believe that the work of the curator in that circumstance is to say, okay, what were you thinking? What's happening when you were a child? How did you grow up? Because I see that happen a lot for dead artists. Curators will look through their body of work and say, okay, this person painted this and that. It's possible it was influenced by, his mom who had a garden when he was 5. So curators give the voice to the artist. It's only a few times where artists are actually gifted storytellers and they're able to weave narratives around their work, and then the curator just comes in and amplifies those narratives and relates it to the audience. So I think I've answered the question.
Okay, Seun, do you have anything to add, please?
Not on that. Dolly has mentioned this before when she was speaking about how she operates her gallery. Jacqueline has mentioned as well.
But how do
Yeah,
you work with your artists?
I mean, it's it's slightly different sometimes, and each artist is peculiar, right? There are going to be some similarities, but I work with a lot of younger artists, and sometimes they don't have a very strong voice. They've not really secured their style. They're still experimenting, so you can't see the work and instantly say, okay, this is Seun Alli's work, right? In those instances, what we tend to do is you have to sort of meet me halfway, right? Again, I will still ask you certain things. What are you trying to convey? What's the story behind this? Sometimes it's not as clear, so we have to what I tend to do sometimes is maybe through my experience and some of the things I've seen. So I'm of this opinion that nobody really comes up with anything new, right? There must be somebody that is similar in some sort of way. Yes, you'd have your style eventually, and yes, you would own your own eventually, but there must be somebody that's influencing you. There must be whether it's an artist, whether it's a musician, something somewhere must be, influencing the work you're doing. Your mother, your brother, your family, whoever it is, we then sit with the artist and try to find the best narrative that interprets, what they're trying to do. And from there, we've had artists who they come with one story, and this is how I intend to, present this work. And over time, as we keep working with the artists, we then have to refine some of the processes. We sometimes have to nudge them and say, okay, why don't you have a look at this? Have you read this? Do you know about this artist? Most times they don't even know. And they're like, oh, thank you for introducing me to this artist, or thank you for asking me to read this book. It's all in the work that I do. Like I said, more established artists, they have a clear idea of where they're going. They're harder to teach, and it's harder to influence in some ways. But that's the beauty of working with an artist who is just starting out. Sometimes isn't as clear about where they're going, and that's perfectly fine. You'll experiment as long as you're serious and you're willing to develop your work and your voice. There's not much that we can say to that. Yeah, so it's a role that definitely complements, and we sometimes find that we do a lot more when we work with younger artists than more established names.
Okay, I'm going to quickly jump to questions because I have two of our speakers that would log off very soon. So, the first question is for Dolapo. So before you leave us, let's quickly give you the question so that you can address that. Okay, so the question is, what is more important to you as a gallery owner and curator when working with an artist? The aesthetics qualities of their work or the story that the artist is championing through their work?
I think it's a tough question. I think it's both. I think it's been different things at different points in time. Initially, I was mainly drawn primarily to aesthetic, and primarily just aesthetic that I liked. And then I think increasingly it's story, and more so than aesthetic. In fact, I would say as of now, it's mainly story. Of course, aesthetic comes with that. You're an artist, so ideally, one of the things in which you're looking at is skill set, talent, the ability to convey that story in a way that's compelling. But ultimately, I think meaning is very, very important to me. There's some really, really talented artists out there whose works are fantastic aesthetically, but I just wouldn't ever work with. And I wouldn't work with just simply because I think the role of a gallery and a curator is not just being a white wall box where an artist just displays their work. A gallerist and a curator also stands for something. Curators are storytellers themselves, and you have to believe in what the artist is saying. A lot of people don't do that, but I firmly have certain convictions about certain things. So these are things that sort of inform my decision making. If an artist believes in something really, really strongly that, for example, violates what I think about core matters or ethical matters, for example, then we may not be the right fit. And I think that that's also very important when people are telling stories. The stories aren't just for entertainment. Stories are means through which you convey philosophy, culture, truths, right? You're making truth claims. You're also making propositions. You're making appeals to things, or you're conveying knowledge or imparting knowledge. And the impact and responsibility that comes with what you say is just as important as how you say it. And I think that's one thing that I think that the art world, but culture more broadly, has forgotten, that there is a responsibility that comes with storytelling. Because the audience is very much influenced and impacted by what it is you're trying to say about the world, or what you think that the world means. And I think that most people haven't figured that out yet. And so for that, everybody's sort of la-di-da everywhere else. But I would say first story, I guess, and by story I mean the meaning behind the story, the meaning behind what you believe and why you believe it, and why you think it's important to say, because you have to think it's very important for you to want to say it. I think that artists should think about these things. And then the way you say it, because some people have ideas that I think are fantastic, but they don't, that maybe the aesthetic way in which they're saying it isn't quite thought through. So I think that the two things come together, and the two things are very important, and I consider both.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering that question, Dolapo. I have another question, but it's directed to Seun. The question is, I finished law school a few months ago, and I would like to know how I can help artists through law. I know contracts are an important part of art industry, but I'm not very clear on what I need to look out for in this contract. Okay, in this one, I would actually have to ask you for your email, the person who sends this, so that we can actually link yourself and Seun Alli together, and then you can discuss this particular question with her, because I think this is more personal and more relatable in terms of law. And like I said in the beginning of the talk, that if anybody has any law questions or any questions that is pertaining to law and rights and all that, you can meet up with Seun later. I will drop in our email on the chat so you can all.
Yes, that's fine. HQ.
Yes, and
at
then you can email
GCA.
her, and then you guys can link up after. Jacqueline, do you have anything to add, unless we move to question 3? Because I think most of these questions have already been answered. Because while you talk and I read the questions, I see that a lot of the questions are already been answered. So I don't know if you want to add anything. I got your email, so I will put that picture up, and then you can talk about what you wanted to talk about after we finish these questions. I think we have good time. We're making good time, so we'll have room for more questions. If anybody has questions, you can put it in the chat so we can actually read it out so that people can answer them before they leave. Okay, so I would move on to question 3, because I think that's the next one we can talk about, which I don't think has been answered. How do you approach narratives that deal with sensitive and controversial topics? Let me be clear in this question. People paint nude. People paint controversial subjects, and I think a lot of people have different reactions towards artworks that are pertaining to that are sensitive and very controversial. How do you, if you're a creator or if you're an artist and you actually paint controversial subjects and the curator, and you have to deal with those controversial subjects, how do you guys come to the point where you both meet up and you can be on one form of agreement, and then you approach the whole project in a very subtle manner? So I'll start with Seun.
I'm actually going to have to log off now. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Because I've spent all the time that I have. I have to join another meeting. But if it's controversial, again, you need to understand what's really important to the artist. And one thing I'll say is if you can't do justice to the artist's vision, then it's best not to work with the artist. So if you also don't believe in what the artist is trying to achieve, perhaps you have a different way of life or thought process or work process. You have to honor the artist enough to say, I can't take on this curatorial work or whatever the case is. Yeah, I'll have to leave it at that because I need to.
Okay, all right, thank you. Dolapo, before you leave, do you want to add to that? Because I know you have to leave as well.
Yes, just a quick one. I don't think controversy in of itself is a problem. I think it depends on what you're being controversial about. Nudity is shocking, but nudity is reality, So I don't see nudity as inherently controversial, although it may be controversial to the audience, and maybe that's the point. So I don't shy away from controversy if the impact and the goal of promoting controversy is a good thing. And I've had controversial pieces in my gallery before. They're a bit, sensitive, particularly those that pertain to religious subjects. So one of my shows, From Mali with Love, had one of my Malian artists who made a piece that was that could have been perceived. The intention was not to be insensitive whatsoever, but could have been perceived as insensitive to both Christians and Muslims because it incorporated, both sort of theological frameworks in one piece, subverting the two. And that was controversial, but we chose to put it up anyways because it provoked dialogue, and the response to it was really positive in the end. So I guess it depends on the intent of the artist. I don't believe in art that's intended to offend for the sake of being offensive, because I don't think that's controversial. I think that's just provocative for no reason. But some things are controversial because they touch at the core of things that we are challenged by, and I think that's a good thing. I think that if you're challenged, if you're forced to think beyond your horizons, you're forced to confront yourself or confront things around you, like political art. Political art is often very, very controversial, particularly to the powers that be, right? But it's still a good thing. So I think controversy depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I don't believe in polemics. So if you're just trying to harm people or trigger people or make people angry for the sake of being angry, there's nothing deep in your controversy. It's simply just being shocking for the sake of being shocking. Then I think that's pretty lowball work, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that's meaningful. I think that controversy should be used for something deeper. So I think that overall, I think it's good. I think the human body is a beautiful thing. And I don't think that it's something that should be deemed to be controversial because we all have it and we all see it. So yes.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Jacqueline. I know you've done works that people might be a bit sensitive to. Do you want to touch on that?
Okay, actually it's good that Dolly's still here because during the Now Aware Myself exhibition, there was a particular installation piece and a painting that was quite controversial. And one of the ways that one of the things that Dolly suggested that we did was to display those two works together. So there was the idea I had was to do an installation with bodies that had been chopped off, and that was like as a reference to the NSAS, the thing that happened at Lekki Toll Gate. And I wanted to talk about it, but not talk about it. And so I told Dolly I wanted to have bodies hanging from the ceiling, and she was like, "We don't want it to be jarring, and ugly and dirty, and but she was like, okay, you can do it in a more muted way." And so we settled for painting some of I think it was a series. There were different parts of the body. Some people had the upper body chopped off. Some people had it was weird, but it was aesthetically pleasing at the end of the day because what we did was the other people were plain, and then the center figure was painted red. And so when you enter the gallery, you think it's just people hanging in the ceiling. You have to actually take a deeper have another look at the work to be sure to know that those people are actually people who have lost parts of their bodies and who are actually dead. And then what she actually also did, which was very interesting, was she there was a centerpiece in the room, which was also a work that was directly linked to the NSAS movement. It was of a lady that didn't have a face, wearing this very exposed, like she had this very high slits on her dress, and the whole thighs were exposed with her locks. And inside the commemorative clothing that I chose to wear for her was Aisha Yusufu, holding her hand up like this. And so it was from the angle, if you could take a photograph from the installation to the work, it was telling its own story in a way. So it was something that was controversial because I mean there are people in Nigeria today that believe that the Lekki toll gate shooting did not happen. And there are people who fight and can kill for that stance because they believe it didn't happen. There are no facts to prove it. And there are people who believe it happened. So if you want to come from something that is politically sensitive, you first of all do it in a way that you attract people with the beauty of how it is arranged. Then they begin to ask questions, and in that dialogue, you can say, I actually had people who came to that exhibition and were arguing, it didn't happen, it happened, and it was an opportunity to actually exchange knowledge and talk about these things without necessarily being offensive. So I think that's what I would say.
Okay. Do you want to talk on this artwork? Because I knew you sent this earlier to me.
Okay, yes, please.
Okay. Can you see it? Can you see it on the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Let's see. Is it visible now?
Not yet.
Okay. We'll come back to that. Let me just quickly read the last question, and then we will leave room for people who have questions so that we can ask all the questions, and then we can wrap up for the day so that everybody can catch up with their other meetings. I don't want to take anybody's time. Okay, so the final question is, and that goes to Jacqueline, and if Dolapo is still there, if she's gone, it's okay. It's what do you think the future of storytelling is in the art world?
I personally think it's actually very exciting. When the more artists are encouraged to explore the storytelling angle of their work, the more the work will be engaging, the more people can relate to the narratives that they're trying to share. And I think that that way the arts community or the impact that the arts world will have on community or in community will be better. Because a lot of times people just look at art and they can't relate because the stories are not stories that they can relate to. So the more artists are able to engage in storytelling, the better acceptance, art will have in community, the better impact art will have on community. I personally believe that art is worthless if it's just hanging in somebody's house and it's not impacting people's lives. So the stories that you tell through the art are stories that will impact the people directly. And if more people are encouraged, which is what I believe is happening in the art world, I mean, via opportunities like this, if more people are encouraged to put more depth and thoughts and process into their work, then definitely it's an exciting future for arts and storytelling.
Okay, I have a question from someone in the audience, and I think it's directed to you, Jacqueline. She said, or he said, I'm not sure if it's a he or a she, but my problem as an artist has always been channeling my work into storytelling. Like at first there's an idea, I then create a piece, and then I go blank at the end of that piece. So how do you how do I say encourage this artist not to go blank?
I would say, first of all, when you have the idea, create like a vision board for the body of what you're trying to portray. Like create go through when you have the idea, go through Pinterest, go through the internet, take pictures, screenshots of things that actually inspire you and are in line with the idea that you want, cut them out, paste them on your studio wall. So when you're creating the work, they act like a reference that you go back to when the idea is becoming vague. Go back there and solidify the idea, remind yourself what you had in mind when you wanted to do the work. There was a time I wanted to shift the appearances of my women, because my works are predominantly of women, and I wanted to make it more Nigerian. I don't want to say more African, but more Nigerian. And I decided that one of the best ways to represent the women because traditionally Nigerian women are very regal. When we dress up for our traditional festivities, we're very regal, very beautiful, very royal. And I was like, one of the best ways to infuse that characteristics into my work is to concentrate on elaborate hair. And what I did in my studio was I went through Pinterest, went through images online, archives, and I took pictures, printed them out, and pasted them in my studio wall. And all the while, for the time being, every time I was drawing and I was kind of confused as to what hairstyle to put on my model, I would say, okay, let me look at this. So it was like a reference. I was looking back at it, and so that way the idea was not lost. I hope I've answered that question.
Yes, yes, you did. I hope the person who asked this question is okay with the answer. And before we wrap up, if you've got questions, you can put it on the chat so we can read it out so that your questions can be answered. If you still have questions that you think you want to take it personal, you can send us an email. Our email is at hello@thejadia.com, so we can direct your questions to the necessary speaker. The last question, which should have been for everyone, unfortunately, I think Dolapo and Seun had previous appointments that they needed to get to. So I think they've already left. So, but I am here and Jacqueline is also here. But the last question is to Jacqueline and also myself. The question is, what advice do you have for artists for the future? I'll start with Jacqueline, then I would say something and then we'll wrap up. Oh,
I
okay.
would
Sorry, Jacqueline. Before we go into that, I think someone just sent a question. So I think we'll just answer people's questions before we move to the last question for the day. Okay, so this question is from Oyewole Lawal, and he said, in a space where you want to make a statement of Afro education through the art of using sociological background, must the story be used or it can just be used as an academic piece of evidence?
It depends on what you mean by a story. Sometimes you don't have to tell a story. The work is already telling its story for itself. If you're talking about from what you said, what did he say?
Afro education through the
Afro
art of
education.
using sociological background must
I
this
feel like that's already self-explanatory. You don't have
okay.
to start leaving up a story to say, oh, no, I don't think it's necessary. In that kind of situation, if you create a story, the meat of what you're trying to say might get lost in the story. So in situations like that, that sounds like a clearly academic topic. And in that kind of situation, it's best to leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
It's self-explanatory. People are going to come in there and relate with what you're doing based on the topic that you say it is for. So there's no need to put a story in that kind of thing. I don't know if
Yeah,
question.
I think personally, when you're going the academic route, you stick to the academic route because when you have projects and things to do that has academic involved, yes, you tailor it according to what is expected of you. But if this is like a personal journey and you're in your studio and you're trying to build a body of work, I think your best bet is to go the route of the storyline. Should you have a project you think you're involved in, which is not academic and it's not personal, it's just a project that you've been commissioned to do, you can do either. You can choose to do the academic route and you can choose to do the storytelling route. If you're going to go through the academic route, the work, like Jacqueline said, the work is definitely going to I mean, sorry, if you're going to go the academic route, the work would speak for itself. So you really don't need to build a story around it because it's already a project and it's academic. And then your context and your summary and all the works of what you need to write to build up what the sociological background, like you said, you can put that under the academic one. But when it comes to you having a body of work that you want to present to a gallery and this is personal to you, yes, you can actually choose to go on the storytelling route where you have a story that's deep in your mind that you want to tell, and then you can build around that. You can start from a piece and then you walk around it and build a body of work that tells that particular story. I hope we're able to attend to your question, Oyewole Lawal. Okay, fantastic. So finally, if there are no other questions, oh, okay. Someone just popped in a question, sorry. So basically, it's not me being lost, and that's the previous question by the person who said she after she does a piece, she just can't find the movement to move to the next piece. So she's saying, well, I don't know if you say he or she, so pardon me, please. So basically, it's not me being lost while creating the art piece. It's more like not knowing how best to interpret my work for others to understand, even though people view from different perspective. Yes. And I think you already answered the question as well, but this is you as an artist, you have to create something which is true to you. You have to leave people alone. You don't want people will decide whether or not it goes with them, and people always have a different perspective and a different view to every artist's work. People have different interpretation, even if you have a story to back up your artwork, because people see things in a different way. So if you're going to do anything that is that has to do with the body of work, you have to stay true to yourself as an artist. You have to work on what you want to put out there and not be worried about how people would view the work or they would interpret the work. Interpretations are also very good for you because that way you can see your work as giving that person different emotions and different ways of viewing the work. So it's definitely going to be a win-win. But first things first, you have to tell yourself, this is the piece you're working with. And when you create one body of piece, you should be able to expand from that one body of piece and move into the other pieces, especially when you have a story that is deep within you that you want to create. I don't know if Jacqueline has something else to add to that as well.
I think you've done justice to that. I think you've done justice to that.
Someone asked, how do I build a storyline from scratch? Do you want to take this, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I don't know. It just sounded like one of those Nara Smith videos of make something with me from scratch. But
Yeah.
yes, um, one of the first things I like to say when I'm talking about building a storyline is your experience. Look from inside. As an artist, your responsibility is to yourself, to be true to yourself and not to be like anybody else. So you look at yourself, look at experiences you've had, look at things that call out to you. I mean, as a person, as an individual, there's some causes that draw you in more than other people. Five of us can look at a picture of an abandoned healthcare center, and only one person will be angry about how did this happen and all of that, and maybe even go an extra mile into doing research and all of that kind of thing. So study yourself, observe yourself, see topics that really pull you in. Those are the kind of places you should go to look for stories. Sometimes stories can be fictional, they don't have to be true. It can even be about yourself, but you call it fiction. Nobody really cares about whether it's true or not. So far as it's engaging, so far as able to tell a story, so far as able to make necessary impact on your audience, so far as your curator and your gallery can connect with it, it doesn't really matter what line you choose to take when you're creating the story. But I think the most important thing is look inside. Let the stories come from within. Let the inspiration come from within. You can now probably ask people, maybe older artists, mentors, curators, people that you work with for direction and how to go about. But first of all, let it come from within because it has to be authentic. It has to be original. people can connect with anything that you do if it's not original.
True. Yeah, that's a very important one. So before we wrap up, there's an artwork I think Jacqueline wants to talk about. I'm trying to see if I can let me just stop sharing and then share my screen again. Maybe that would help.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, we'll just quickly go back to this and then we'll move on to the final question. Okay, so talk us through this work, please.
Okay, so this work is titled Ashwebi Assembly. I don't know if you could zoom into it a little more. Can you? Is it possible?
Trying, but I don't think so.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So it's titled Ashwebi Assembly, and I was trying to talk about the three fictional tribes that I created. So the person on the first person with the flower, the sunflower on her head, that has one sunflower on her head. So first person, the one that her hand is on her chin like this, and she represented we call them the orators. So it was like an oxymoron because they don't have mouths, but they're called the orators. So why are they called the orators? It was because, I mean, they could talk to you, they could whisper in your mind. As they're looking at you, they can whisper things into your mind. And the person, so the representatives, she was a representative of a kingdom. I called it another kingdom. So this kingdom, I looked for traditional names, so I can't remember all of them right now. But I did my research to make sure that the names tallied with the kingdoms. So the orators were from this kingdom. The people that had no faces, we call them clairvoyants. The clairvoyants, they're people that had a great healing power, who could see your past and your future, and who could communicate with you through feelings. So that's represented by people that didn't have faces. Then the people that didn't have eyes, we call them the seers. Those people could see, they could see everything about your life from one touch. They could tell you what's going to happen to you, what's going to happen, to you in the next minute and all of that kind of stuff. So at first glance, you see these people and think that this is a bunch of people who are handicapped because they look like they're missing things. But those things which were supposedly things that will make them handicapped were actually the things that give them superpowers. And I talked about it earlier, how that these three kingdoms existed and they didn't even know of each other. Things happened and they had to come out of those kingdoms to find solutions, and in so doing found one another. And we went through the whole bias of, I don't accept this person, the judgment of it, everything that comes with racism, that comes with tribalism, all the rejection, the whole nine yards. And then at some point, they realized that, let's stop fighting each other. We can actually help each other's kingdoms thrive and be better. We can actually be more united for progress. And they decided that, you know what, every 2 years, the kingdoms will come together. We'll do this big festival to celebrate our unity and celebrate this day when we decided that we're going to, help each other grow in towards progress. And so this was like the culmination of all the stories of all the people that I featured in the body of work. This was titled Ashwebi Assembly. So inside them, there was subliminal messaging of, there's this SCA stone mask, there's an Ife mask, there's Ibo Uku stools, there's knock terracotta works there. So it was just certainly saying these people represented Nigeria, represented people in Nigeria. But at the same time, this exhibition happened in London. So because I wanted it to relate with a broader audience, I decided to say these people are representative of different tribes and different countries of the world. The fact that they're Black doesn't necessarily mean that we cannot use them as a metaphor to stretch it and say they represent different countries of the world. And sometimes you can see a country, you can see a group of people and say, oh, these people are medieval, they're old, they're backwards, they don't have anything to offer me. But by the time you go there, you realize that there are things that you can learn from them. So basically, there's nobody you cannot learn anything from. Even as in the most mundane places that you learn the best life lessons, So that's what this work was about. And when I talk about using aesthetics to draw people in, it was a beautiful work. It was really large. It's expansive. It's 10 feet. So when you're standing in front of it, you're confused and you're like, wow, what's this about? Why don't they have eyes? Why don't they have? And by the time you see that these people are together and the work is titled Ashwebi, what's the meaning of Ashwebi? It's something that we do in Nigeria to create uniformity, to symbolize togetherness. And then you now realize, okay, these people are actually different, but they've come together to celebrate something, So that's an example of how you can use storytelling to lure your viewer to talk about something that might even be controversial in a sense.
Yeah. So in essence, you have to find a way to balance everything except when it comes to interpretation and aesthetics and storytelling, and everything has to work and come together to form a very true piece. So yes, we can move to the last and final
Yes.
question, which is, what advice would you give to young artists on integrating storytelling into their work?
I would say research, like research. A lot of times and Seun said it earlier, that when you ask artists, do you know any artists doing work in this direction? They don't know. Okay, try and do research on this artist. They're like, oh, I've never heard of that artist before. I've talked to so many artists too, and they don't know so many artists. So it's almost like you're an artist, you want to be an artist, you want to do something, and you don't know anybody that has done the things that you want to do, or you don't know anybody that is doing what you want to do, and yet you say you want to be successful at it. One of the first things you have to do as an artist is look for who has done what you're doing, or who is doing what you're doing, and then find a way to connect with them. Sometimes you might not be able to. Thank God for internet, thank God for Instagram, thank God for emails.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might not be able to, you might not be able to have direct access to them, but you can study what they are doing. You can look for interviews, listen to their thought processes, listen to their work, listen to what they do when they're preparing to, launch a new body of work. Like for me, I mean, I don't have one particular artist that inspires me. I have several artists that inspire me, and it's not even their work that inspires me, it's the stories that they tell that inspires me. Like when they talk about, what they were feeling before they started this body of work, when they talk about the journey from how they started to where they are now. These are the things that inspire me in my own studio, and because of that, I'm always looking for new artists to listen to learn from. And I feel like that's something that's lost for younger artists. I don't know why, but you can't get anywhere. You can't get to where you want to go on your own. You need people. You need people actively directing you, guiding you. Of course, you don't want anybody dictating to you what you want to do, but I mean, you need people for guidance. I have a lot of senior colleagues. I will do something and I'll say, come, or even my own colleagues, I'll say, what do you think about this thing I want to do? It's that there's Rome wasn't built in a day, and one person did not build Rome. There's nobody who is a success story today that did not have people around them that they could lean on, they could get advice from, they could grow with. You need that kind of circle around you, and you need to have your own hunger, to want to do better. And the only way to do that is to research, 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 and do the work, do the work. I know that it's hard work, it's really hard work, but do the work. Nobody can do the work for you, you have to do the work. And I often say, I think I would say this in closing, that I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in luck. I believe that what we call luck is preparation meeting opportunity. 10 people can have the same opportunity come to them, but it's only the person who was prepared that can take that opportunity. And then people will say, oh, that person is lucky. You have to keep working. The harder you work, the more prepared you are, the more opportunities you can take. The more opportunities you can take, the luckier you are, in quotes. So you have to keep working. You have to keep putting yourself out there. You have to keep doing the work. And when opportunities come, you'll be able to grab them. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jacqueline. I'll just add a little to that. Younger artists use time to buy books. You have to start reading. Research is key, because there's nothing in this world that doesn't have to do that. Everything boils down to research. And I would just give a bit of an example, maybe, but it's in the curatorial aspect, but it still has a lot to do with being an artist and being able to research and being able to give a comprehensive body of work, especially when you want to tell stories. Now, when I used to run the auction house back in Nigeria, then I had a 1 year to put together a body of collection of work. Now, it's up to me to tell a story of what I am trying to put together, and I'm just not going to pick works randomly from everywhere. The auction always requires that you put works and together to form a story. So I have a whole year to do that, and I have to scout works from the whole of West Africa, if possible, even in Africa. And at the end of the day, you have to pull all these works together to form a particular story. What are you trying to show? Are you trying to show the cultural diversity of Africa, or you're trying to show um, um, what they call it? You're trying to move in a particular direction. You're trying to tell people something. You're trying to pass a message. You're trying to pass a narrative. It always has to boil down to something that is deep within you that can connect to people as well. So, like Jacqueline said, it's important for you to research, especially when you're trying to build a body of work. It's important for you to research. What do you want to do? What message do you want to pass across to your audience? What are you trying to work on? Even if it's personal, if you think you're going through so much emotions that you don't even know how to communicate it with your art. That's the best way to do it. And then you build around that communication, build around that body of work. You start with one and then you move to the next one. I've actually met a lot of artists who cannot actually speak to people, but they use their work to speak to people. And that's how you move around. And also, like what Jacqueline said, find people who you know do what you do. Go to them, talk to them. Look, it's if you sit in one place or you judge yourself before you move to that person, you will never get anything done. Like that, my dad always says something, people don't bite, human beings don't bite. If the person says no, then you move on to the next person. But if you don't try, you never know. So if you find someone who does exactly what you do and you want to get, like, you have a question in mind, or you have something you think you need, the person can relate to, knock on the person's door and ask your question and say, oh, this is me, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help? Can you give me a suggestion? If you have established artists who are like mentors to you, it's best you go talk to them and tell them what you're going through. If you have like an artist block, I don't want to call it brain block. I always say artist block because everybody's creative. At some point, you just feel you can't do anything, and then it's just there. You're stuck. That's the time you need to carry your bags and go for as many exhibitions as possible. Go to museums if you have anyone around you. Go to studio visits. Just move around, move in that circle that can bring your creativity back and that can help you ask questions that would help you continue what you're doing. So, like Jacqueline said, it's important you find people who do what you do that can help you. If you think you want a one-on-one session with someone, ask for if the person's got time to talk to you, and buy books. I know a lot of people think because there's internet that books are not important. Books are essential, not just important. They are essential. The amount of art books I have, I can't even count it. But you need to buy books. You need to have some sort of point of reference. You need to be able to go back to something and say, oh, I saw this and I can make this work. I can interpret it in my own way. Buy books, go to exhibitions, talk to people, especially artists. And you have easy access now. There's internet. So go to their DM and send them a message. If they don't respond, find a way to interact with them on another level, or you move on to the next person who is available. So don't shy away from communication, because communication is key. Build your network, and that would also help. Embrace your mentors. I know it might be hard sometimes. Some mentors have very different ways of mentoring people, but look for the ones that you feel palatable with, and then you want to talk to the person and you feel the person can give you what you need. And yes, do the hard work, because yes, luck is not what is it, relative? How do you put it? Yeah, it's not, because if you do the hard work, yes, definitely you get results. So I hope everyone who is online was able to take something with them today. And I hope we'll see you on our next talk. Thank you, Jacqueline, so much for accepting our invitation. Thank you for staying till the end of the event. I lost two of my people, but it's okay. They were able to contribute before before they left, which was a good thing. And hopefully the next session, I always try to make sure it's 90 minutes, but we're just 4 minutes. Well, the 4 minutes, the 5 minutes we gave in for people to join in, we're just taking it back. So hope to see you all sometime soon. Hopefully, maybe during our next talk. Yes. And thank you again, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Jacqueline. I will be in touch. Let me see. Did someone send in a message before we go? All right. Okay. So it's just a thank you message. All right. So thank you, everyone, and speak to you all soon. Have a nice weekend and bye.
Bye.
Bye.